Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, and it is March 29th, 2023. Here we go once again. We've got the co captain, Rusty, off to my, I don't know, is that off to my left or my right? Depends upon how you look at it, I guess. What would that be? I go lefty loosey, righty tighty. So I'm going to say to my right. It's to my right, might be to your left. Anyway, so now we got that out of the way. Let's continue on with the show. Oh boy. How are we doing today? I'm exhausted. These first 2 days of the week have been a very hard one. And more today. We yesterday we got the back wall taken apart, and we got the slat boards off the two side walls, and we got that all moved too. And we moved a lot of fixtures. We filled up an entire 15-foot truck 2 days in a row and moved fixtures between the outlet mall. And also, we, for our first time yesterday, went to the storage unit and started depositing things in there and realizing that's going to fill up very fast. And hopefully, we won't need a second unit. Today, it's going to be moving a lot of boxes. We had the girls start packing up yesterday because even with a 50% off sale, we're not doing much business out there. We weren't doing much business when we were regular price. We can't even give things away out there. What a big mistake. And I've been laying in bed the middle of the night and this morning praying to God, because God, He's the God of possible, because right now it's looking pretty impossible. We took a really good situation, and these last 9 months being in Western Wayne was the biggest mistake we could have made. Good morning, Kathy. Good morning, Tommy, sir. Good morning, Kelly. Good morning, Bible Blues Brother Scott. That's 4. We're still looking for Jackie and Katie and cousin Dave, and they should be here shortly. Anyway, so continued prayers. We must continue to pray for each other, because we're all going through trials and tribulations, circumstances in which we need to seek God and we need to pray for each other. So keep each other in your thoughts and prayers. Okay, let's get to the message for today. We have been blessed with a new day. Let the brilliance of God's presence in the sunshine open our minds and hearts to reflect love in all our actions. Experience God's love and gentleness, for there is nothing stronger than gentleness. That's what Becky keeps telling me with Rusty. She tells me I need to be more gentle with him. She says at times I can be a little rough. I need to be more gentle. Yes, Rusty. He heard his name. Yes, Rusty. How can we help you? Go ahead and sit on the... No, not on the table. Oh, here he comes. He's going to have to be escorted out. Oh, maybe he'll sit on the other end of the table. If he can stay there, then we're good. But when he comes around the corner and starts getting on top of the computer or laptop, that don't work. We don't want to hear Siri. We don't want to go out. We just want to have a message. For today, let us pledge to be gentle with ourselves and others, and learning the strength of gentleness. Rusty, I'm supposed to learn. Hey, I was trying to be gentle with you. I was trying to be gentle with him, and he pawed back at me. I tried. As our minds are busy and sometimes seem to race from one task to another, let us realize we have useless thoughts that spoil everything, and all mischief begins with useless thoughts. We can reject useless thoughts when our minds first perceive their presence in our minds and return to communion with God, relying on Him and His divine love and guidance. Good morning, Miss Katie and Miss Jackie. We were just looking for you. Glad you could find us here. And I hope your connection is much better today, Miss Jackie. The world around us has been darkened by sinfulness and the deniability of God. We see that all over the place. The misguidance toward right and wrong and guiding people away from focusing on God and His plan and His will for us. Having a belief in God and having a faith, love Him and trust Him and His guidance and His light of love will lead us through the darkness of the world. Let us realize life is a series of opportunities for emotional, spiritual, and intellectual growth. No opportunity for action is beyond our capabilities. Let us look to this day only and participate in those experiences that are designated or designed rather for our particular development. In our prayer for today, want to speak. I think he's got some talk texting going on here. I don't know if this stuff makes any sense because it says, I'll read it the way it reads on here. It says, in question mark, R period, prayer question mark, for today want to speak question mark. Let's get back to the message. Let us be thankful for love, for hope, and for faith, thanking Him for teaching us how to live a better life. Sometimes we make the decision to change our lives to change our lives. We need to do two things: have faith and confidence in things unseen, fundamental goodness and purpose of the universe. The other thing is obedience, living our faith, living the life that we think God wants us to live, living with gratitude, humility, honesty. We shouldn't think, we should just ask Him. What life do you want us to live, God? Well, God says He wants us to live life living with gratitude, humility, honesty, purity, unselfishness, love, faith, and obedience that will give us the strength to overcome sin. Live today with joy and happiness. God's blessings on your day. Much love to each of you. You have good connection today. I hope it stays good for you. All right, there is your message for today. It is time. Is Marie here? Marie, for the Book of Amazing Stories. Let's get on into the book and see what we got today. Today, we've got those miracle fruit jars. Anybody have an idea what this is about? Miracle fruit jars. Alexander was some kind of genius. In the age before supermarkets, when most Americans lived on farms or tended garden plots in town, preserving food for the winter ahead was a matter of life and death. That's why entrepreneurs like Mason and Ball became household names for mass producing canning jars. But creating self sealing lids for those jars became a very vexing challenge. That's when Alexander Kerr's inventive mind discovered the secret worth its weight in gold. The problem for Kerr was in finding the capital to mass produce his product. In 1903, he partnered with John Giles to form the Hermetic Closure Company of Chicago. A year later, he changed the name to Kerr Glass Manufacturing Company. He patented another one of his inventions, the first threaded ring to hold the lid down, the same method used today. Alexander mortgaged his home and he borrowed heavily to finance his new startup. The competition was stiff and the American economy fragile. Those early days were tough sledding. Yet Alexander Kerr, who had been converted under the ministry of evangelist D.L. Moody, had committed to test God's promise to bless those who tithe, even when he had precious little to give. That belief was severely tested 4 years after he started his company. It was 1906, and his fruit jars were being produced in San Francisco. On April 18th, a massive earthquake hit. Some 3,000 people were killed, and 80% of the city was destroyed. When Alexander received the newsflash, his friends said, "You're a ruined man." He responded, "I don't believe it. I know God can't go back on his promises." He wired San Francisco. A devastating answer came back. Factory in the heart of the fire, undoubtedly destroyed. Heat so intense will be unable to find out anything for several days. Those were fate testing days for Kerr's family. About a week later, a second wire came from San Francisco. Factory miraculously saved. Everything for a mile and a half on all sides of the factory burned, but the factory remained standing. Kerr immediately left for the coast. It wasn't until he got to the site that he saw the amazing scope of God's miracle. His factory was made entirely of wood, containing huge tanks where the glass was melted at hot temperatures, fueled by oil. His building was the most flammable in the area, yet the raging inferno came only to the edges of the Kerr factory, scorching its fences before jumping over his building to consume whole blocks around it. The fences were not burned, nor was the building singed. So complete was the miracle that not a single one of the thousands of jars was cracked by the massive earthquake or fires that followed. Alexander later spoke in churches reminding Christians of God's promise to bless those who tithe. If you are tempted to withhold that which belongs to God, you might want to ponder this. The most impossible task in life is to outgive God. Give and you will receive. Your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and poured into your lap. That is Luke 6, verse 38. I think we just recently covered that one as well. All right. That is story time for today. We're doing really well right now. We may get done early, and I could use that because I was up in the middle of the night. I was up at that 3:30, 4 o'clock again, and my mind just keeps racing and thinking of what needs to be done. And finally, Becky's just like, "Are you okay?" And I just kept saying things that we got to do, and she's just like, "You need to settle." You need to sleep. And so I did get a little bit more sleep, but I think I need to get a nap in before we take off and fill a 15-foot truck for another day and get it unloaded too. We've been able to successfully load and unload the truck the first 2 days. We got the new fixtures up into Ankeny. Becky was able to get the reset done yesterday, turned out spectacular. So we look really good in Ankeny. And so then we've got the fixtures that were in Ankeny are now in the outlet mall. And we take official possession of that next week. And so that's when Becky will go in and start looking at getting walls ready and painting and working towards a May 1st or somewhere around that. We open May 1st, we hope. Meanwhile, I will be hanging out at the storage. I will be hanging out at the storage unit trying to split stuff off because at this point, closing sale didn't go so well in West Des Moines, so we're having to do a lot of packing. And so we're going to have to take all those boxes and put them into storage. And then as I have time, I'm going to have to go through them and divvy stuff out. It's going to be busy for the next few weeks. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the word. We continue on in Old Testament reading in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 11, verse 1. You must love the Lord your God and always obey his requirements, decrees, regulations, and commands. Keep in mind that I am not talking now to your children who have never experienced the discipline of the Lord your God or seen his greatness and his strong hand and powerful arm. They didn't see the miraculous signs and wonders he performed in Egypt against Pharaoh and all his land. They didn't see what the Lord did to the armies of Egypt and to their horses and chariots, how he drowned them in the Red Sea as they were chasing you. He destroyed them, and they have not recovered to this very day. Your children didn't see how the Lord cared for you in the wilderness until you arrived here. They didn't see what he did to Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, the descendant of Reuben, when the earth opened its mouth in the Israel camp and swallowed them, along with their households and tents and everything living that belonged to them. But you have seen the Lord perform all these mighty deeds with your own eyes. God has done some mighty things in our lives. And so what that is doing is it's saying, hey, when times get tough, don't forget what God has done for you previously. And if God has done so much for you previously, and you put your love and trust and faith in him, he will not abandon you. He will not leave you. He will be there for you and with love. And he's got a plan. And I was thinking in the middle of the night, his plan is not always equal to our plan. It can sometimes be if we are seeking God and following his plan for us. Then our plan can equal his plan. But what we must realize is if our plan does not match his plan is always greater than our plan. Therefore, be careful to obey. There's the old word again. Every command I am giving you today, so you may have strength to go in and take over the land you're about to enter. If you obey, you will enjoy a long life in the land the Lord swore to give to your ancestors and to you, their descendants, a land flowing with milk and honey. For the land you are about to enter and take over, you're going to enter it and take it over. That's what the plan has been all along. Unfortunately, the generation prior to you didn't take faith and trust in that plan, and they died off. Now it's your turn. And what does take over require? It requires action. Make it happen. So this is kind of what we're going to say is the M. We're hearing a lot about the obedience, and now we're going to have to take action. We're going to have to make it happen. Is not like the land of Egypt from which you came, where you planted your seed and made irrigation ditches with your foot as in a vegetable garden. Rather, the land you will soon take over is a land of hills and valleys and plenty of rain, a land that the Lord your God cares for. He watches over it through each season of the year. If you carefully obey the commands I am giving you today, so you got to listen and you got to obey. And if you love the Lord your God and serve him with all your heart and soul, then he will send the rains in their proper seasons, the early and late rains, so you can bring in your harvests of grain, new wine, and olive oil. He will give you lush pasture land for your livestock, and you yourselves will have all you want to eat. But be careful. Don't let your heart be deceived, so that you turn away from the Lord and serve and worship other gods. If you do, the Lord's anger will burn against you. He will shut up the sky and hold back the rain, and the ground will fail to produce its harvests. Then you will quickly die in that good land the Lord is giving you. So commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these words of mine. Tie them to your hands and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Teach them to your children. As we're getting ready to say this, let's see how we can apply this in our days right now. Teach them to your children. Talk about them when you are at home and when you are on the road, when you are going to bed and when you are getting up. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates, so that as long as the sky remains above the earth, you and your family may flourish in the land the Lord swore to give your ancestors. Be careful to obey all these commands I am giving you. Show love to the Lord your God by walking in his ways and holding tightly to him. Then the Lord will drive out all the nations ahead of you, though they are much greater and stronger than you, and you will take over their land. Wherever you set foot, that land will be yours. Your frontiers will stretch from the wilderness in the south to Lebanon in the north, and from the Euphrates River in the east to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you, for the Lord your God will cause the people to fear and dread you, as he promised, wherever you go in the whole land. Look, today I'm giving you the choice between a blessing and a curse. You will be blessed if you obey the commands of the Lord your God I am giving you today. But you will be cursed if you reject the commands of your God and turn away from him and worship gods you have not known. When the Lord your God and helps you take possession of it, you must pronounce the blessing at Mount Gerizim and the curse at Mount Ebal, or Ebal maybe, Ebal. These two mountains are west of the Jordan River in the land of the Canaanites who live in the Jordan Valley, near the town of Gilgal, not far from the oaks of Morah. For you are about to cross the Jordan River to take over the land the Lord your God is giving you. When you take that land and are living in it, you must be careful to obey. Are you hearing the word obey, obey, obey? All the decrees and regulations I am giving you today. These are the decrees and regulations you must be careful to obey when you live in the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, is giving you. You must obey them as long as you live. You see how that word obey, part of our shalom, the O, obey, obedience, we're hearing it over and over and over and over. When you drive out the nations that live there, you must destroy. This is going to be making it happen. This is action part. So we're really focusing today on, really you could say listening, obeying, and then making it happen. We're on the end of the shalom today. When you drive out the nations that live there, you must destroy all the places where they worship their gods, high on the mountains, up in the hills, and under every green tree. Break down their altars and smash their sacred pillars. Burn their Asherah poles and cut down their carved idols. Completely erase the names of their gods. Bible Blues Brother Scott. Do you know what I'm thinking? If we apply this into today's terms, I can't say it, but you know what I'm thinking. Do not worship the Lord your God in the way these pagan peoples worship their gods. Rather, you must seek the Lord your God at the place of worship he himself will choose from among all the tribes, the place where his name will be honored. There you will bring your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, your sacred offerings, your offerings to fulfill a vow, your voluntary offerings, and your offerings of the firstborn animals of your herds and flocks. There you and your families will feast in the presence of the Lord your God, and you will rejoice in all you have accomplished because the Lord your God has blessed you. Your pattern of worship will change. Today, all of you are doing as you please because you have not yet arrived at the place of rest, the land the Lord your God is giving you as your special possession. But you will soon cross the Jordan River and live in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. When he gives you rest from all your enemies and you're living safely in the land, you must bring everything I command you: your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, your sacred offerings, and your offerings to fulfill a vow, to the designated place of worship, the place the Lord your God chooses for his name to be honored. You must celebrate there in the presence of the Lord your God with your sons and daughters and all your servants. And remember to include the Levites who live in your towns, for they will receive no allotment of land among you. Be careful not to sacrifice your burnt offerings just anywhere you like. You may do so only at the place the Lord will choose within one of your tribal territories. There you must offer your burnt offerings and do everything I command you. But you may butcher your animals and eat their meat in any town wherever you want, whenever you want. You may freely eat the animals with which the Lord your God blesses you. All of you, whether ceremonially clean or unclean, may eat that meat just as you now eat gazelle and deer. But you must not consume the blood. You must pour it out on the ground like water. But you may not eat your offerings in your hometown, neither the tithe of your grain, and the new wine and olive oil, nor the firstborn of your flocks and herds, nor any offering to fulfill a vow, nor your voluntary offerings, nor your sacred offerings. You must eat these in the presence of the Lord your God at the place he will choose. Eat them there with your children, your servants, and the Levites who live in your towns, celebrating in the presence of the Lord your God in all you do. And be very careful never to neglect the Levites as long as you live in your land. When the Lord your God expands your territory as he has promised, and you have the urge to eat meat, you may freely eat meat whenever you want. It might happen that the designated place of worship, the place the Lord your God chooses for his name to be honored, is a long way from your home. If so, you may butcher any of the cattle, sheep, or goats the Lord has given you, and you may freely eat the meat in your hometown, as I have commanded you. Anyone, whether ceremonially clean or unclean, may eat that meat, just as you do now with gazelle and deer. But never consume the blood, for the blood is the life, and you must not consume the lifeblood with the meat. Blood. We are not to consume blood. Makes you think also. Instead, pour out the blood on the ground like water. Do not consume the blood, so that all may go well with you and your children after you, because you will be doing what pleases the Lord. Take your sacred gifts and your offerings given to fulfill a vow to the place the Lord chooses. You must offer the meat and blood of your burnt offerings on the altar of the Lord your God. The blood of your other sacrifices must be poured out on the altar of the Lord your God, but you may eat the meat. Be careful to obey all my commands so that all will go well with you and your children after you, because you will be doing what is good and pleasing to the Lord your God. When the Lord your God goes ahead of you and destroys the nations, and you drive them out and live in their land, do not fall into the trap of following their customs and worshiping their gods. Do not inquire about their gods, saying, how do these nations worship their gods? I want to follow their example. You must not worship the Lord your God the way the other nations worship their gods, for they perform for their gods every detestable act that the Lord hates. They even burn their sons and daughters as sacrifices to their gods. They sacrifice their children. So be careful to obey all the commands I give you. You must not add anything to them or subtract anything from them. We continue on into the book of Luke for New Testament reading. Luke chapter 8, verse 22. Rusty's just rooting around in a bag. Hope there's nothing in there that can break. One day, Jesus said to his disciples, let's cross to the other side of the lake. So they got into a boat and started out. As they sailed across, Jesus settled down for a nap. But soon a fierce storm came down on the lake. The boat was filling with water, and they were in real danger. The disciples went and woke him up, shouting, Master, Master, we're going to drown. When Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and the raging waves. Suddenly the storm stopped and all was calm. Then he asked them, Where is your faith? The disciples were terrified and amazed. Who is this man? They asked each other. When he gives a command, even the wind and waves obey him. So they arrived in the region of the Gerasenes across the lake from Galilee. As Jesus was climbing out of the boat, a man who was possessed by demons came out to meet him. For a long time, he had been homeless and naked, living in the tombs outside the town. As soon as he saw Jesus, he shrieked and fell down in front of him. Then he screamed, Why are you interfering with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? The demons even know him. Please, I beg you, don't torture me. For Jesus had already commanded the evil spirit to come out of him. The spirit had often taken control of the man, even when he was placed under guard and put into chains and shackles. He simply broke them and rushed out into the wilderness, completely under the demon's powers. Jesus demanded, What is your name? Legion, he replied, for he was filled with many demons. The demons kept begging Jesus not to send them into the bottomless pit. There happened to be a large herd of pigs feeding on the hillside nearby, and the demons begged him to let them enter into the pigs. So Jesus gave them permission. We hear that so much. Another time we can think about that is, remember when you had the story of Job? And what happened? God was touting how Job was such a righteous man. And Satan, the enemy, is saying, well, geez, if everything went wrong in his life, I'm sure he would curse you. And so then what does God do? God allows. He allows, just as Jesus is giving permission here. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the pigs, and the entire herd of pigs plunged down the steep hillside into the lake and was drowned. You gotta love it. Not so much if you're the pig owner. If you're the pig owner and all your pigs have just ran into the water and died, that's not good for the hog farmer. When the herdsmen saw it, they fled to the nearby town and the surrounding countryside, spreading the news as they ran. People rushed out to see what had happened. A crowd soon gathered around Jesus, and they saw the man who had been freed from the demons. He was sitting at Jesus' feet, fully clothed and perfectly sane, and they were all afraid. This guy who had run around wild, breaking out of chains and running around in the wilderness naked, he's clothed. He's sane. He's not some wild man running around anymore. What should the townspeople do? Yeah, you'd be a little bit surprised and shocked. And shouldn't you be like, wow, thank you. That guy was out of control. Thank you. Hey, I know a couple other people you could work on too. Just kidding. Then those who had seen what happened told the others how the demon-possessed man had been healed. And what did they do? Did they celebrate and say, hey, Jesus, we've got a few other people you could do some work on too? No. And all the people in the region of the Gerasenes begged Jesus to go away and leave them alone, for a great wave of fear swept over them. He just took care of one of their biggest problems in town. They should be pleased. But instead, go away. We're afraid. So Jesus returned to the boat and left, crossing back to the other side of the lake. The man who had been freed from the demons begged to go with him. But Jesus sent him home, saying, "No, go back to your family and tell them everything God has done for you." And what that makes me think of is, how there'll be people, missionaries that are called off to other countries to serve God, to share the good news. What we have to remember is that not all of us are called to be missionaries. Or what you could look at it is maybe you are being called to be a missionary. You're just not being called to go off to Africa or Asia, but rather you are being called to be a missionary where you are currently at. That you share your testimony and your relationship with God with those within your sphere of influence. I haven't said that for a long time. The sphere of influence. We're not all called to run off to Africa. There are some that are, and glory be to them. But some of us, many of us, we're called to stay. This man, he wants to go off with Jesus. And Jesus says, "No, I need you to stay here. Go back to your family and tell them everything God has done for you." So he went all through the town proclaiming the great things Jesus had done for him. So he listened and he carried out what he was called to do. Notice how in the past Jesus had told others not to tell anyone, but he tells this non-Jew to tell everyone. That is the truth. You kind of wonder by this point, because he had told so many not to say anything, at this point, the cat's out of the bag. Too many other people didn't listen to him. They know who he is now. And you got to think Jesus just like, okay, go and tell everyone, because if I tell you not to tell anyone, you're going to tell everyone anyway. At this point, the cat's out of the bag. Go ahead and just start telling everyone. But he is serving as, like I said, he is, whether you look at it like that or not, but he is serving as a missionary within his own family and his own town. He is sharing the good news of God and what he has done in his life. And that's what we're called to do too. Oh, let's see. Psalm 70, verses 1 through 5. Please, God, rescue me. Come quickly, Lord, and help me. May those who try to kill me be humiliated and put to shame. May those who take delight in my trouble be turned back in disgrace. Let them be horrified by their shame, for they said, "Aha!" I got to say this. Friday. Aha! We're on an aha challenge right now. Aha! We've got him now. But may all who search for you be filled with joy and gladness in you. May those who love your salvation repeatedly shout, "God is great." But as for me, I am poor and needy. Please hurry to my aid, O God. You are my helper and my savior. O Lord, do not delay. Proverbs 12, verse 4. A worthy wife is a crown for her husband, but a disgraceful woman is like a cancer in his bones. And we are at the end of today. And like I said, we're going to get done early today. I know I could read a second story, but I think especially since I had gotten up earlier in the day, in the morning here, I'm going to try to see if I can get a little bit more of a nap in before we have to load a 15-foot truck again and unload it. Scotty has been amazing. I even took him out for lunch yesterday. And Becky called me and she's like, "How's your day going? Where are you at?" I said, "Well, actually, Scotty and I just went to lunch." And she was so happy to hear that I had taken him to lunch because so occasionally I can do the right thing. Usually I'm just go, go, go. And so what I said is, especially after taking all that stuff apart in the morning, it was kind of like, we need a break before we load this truck. And it takes a lot to load a 15-foot truck with just two of us. So got some fuel in our bodies, and then we loaded the truck, and then we unloaded the truck. Mission accomplished, day 2. But now we've got day 3, and we still got day 4 as well. We're hoping to be wrapped up by tomorrow. And so things are going well so far, but we're not across the finish line yet. Keep us in your thoughts and prayers, just as we will keep you in our thoughts and prayers as well. Let's wrap up with the prayer for this Wednesday, March 29th, 2023. The disciples were in trouble and knew it. Towering waves slammed against their splintering fishing boat, and water poured over the sides of the storm-tossed craft. The disciples' only hopes for survival, their boat, was quickly sinking. Except it wasn't their only hope. Something, someone else could save them. Jesus calmed that storm, and he's still calming storms in the lives of our Christian brothers and sisters in restricted nations and hostile areas. Lord, save my persecuted Christian family from despair when persecution washes into their lives and all seems lost. Remind them to call on you. You save. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. We must call on him. He must not be our last resort, but he should become our first resort. He sees us when we're struggling. We kind of imagine our lives, maybe for some of us right now, we're in that splintered boat. The waves are high. The winds are hard. It doesn't seem like we're going to be able to survive this one. But we've survived other situations in the past with his help. And it's kind of like the Israelites. He didn't part the Red Sea to allow them an escape so that he could then put them out to the wilderness so that they would die. He had a plan. It's just a matter of, are we in agreement with his plan? And we must understand that when all hope is lost, when it seems as though all hope is lost, there is someone someone that we can call on to help us through. It may not always turn out the way we want it to, the way we expect it to. But when we call on Him, we must always remember that His plan is better than our plan, and He will not leave us. And we must keep focused on Him, on the promises that lie ahead, and always remember that the best days are still to come. Take care. God bless. Have a wonderful day. And God willing, we will be back with you again tomorrow morning. Until then.